What? You don't use Lynette? Come on, don't tell me it's because you don't know how good she is. She has so much utility, works on so many teams, and challenges the established Anemo hierarchy. Still don't believe me? I'll prove it to you. We'll start by covering the mechanics that make her special. Lynette is so much more than the Wish brand Yelan you might assume when you first see her skill. But her elemental burst is really where she starts to shine. It can taunt nearby enemies, infuse with Pyro, Cryo, Electro, and Hydro, and deal infused damage with Vivid Shots, while still swirling and dealing Anemo damage. When it comes to Lynette's team comps, if you can dream it, she can make it work. Free to play? Done. Mono Hydro? Dusted. Aggravate, freezing, burning, hyperbloom? Why the heck not? Before we get to the teams, there's a good chance that if you're watching this video, you aren't subscribed to my channel. My goal is to hit 1,000 subs and you can help me do it. While you're down below the video, how about leaving me a like? It can't hurt. But back to it, in the teams I'll cover, Lynette has the same Favonius Sword and 4-piece Viridescent artifacts, and these work for nearly any team you might want to use her in. She usually benefits the most from attack and ER rolls on her artifacts, unless you build her to be a DPS, in which case she wants the classic attack, crit damage, and crit rate. For a free-to-play team, I use Amber, Lynette, Shunlei, and Barbara to make up an early game vape comp. You just have to make sure Lynette's burst infuses with Hydro, and the Vivid Shots will reapply the element over and over again so you can vape with Shangling's burst. If you have C2 Amber like me, you can get some decent vape damage by manually detonating Baron Bunny. Just make sure you time the Pyro hits right after the Hydro application, otherwise Lynette will be the one performing Vaporize with her burst. Lynette really comes into the spotlight in an Aggravate comp. Matched with Nahida, Raiden, and Zhongli, this team slaps, to the point of being able to take on those local legends in Fontaine. If you don't know about these hidden bosses, they have really powerful attacks, and usually sport 2 to 3.5 million health between levels of 90 and 100. And this Lynette team takes down the local legend Liam in only a few minutes. Here's another Aggravate team comp for Lynette, using Beto for Electro and Yayo for Dendro. As you can see, it's not absolutely the best. Again, I don't necessarily have these characters built, and if you're comparing it to an all Archon team, yeah, it's not going to stand up. But they're able to do really good damage to Masanori, especially not being, spec'd into everything that they need with their artifacts and weapons. Adding some 5-star weapons and some better artifact rolls, this team would definitely put in the work that you need. So now I hope you can see why Lynette's such a good character to build. Now let's take a look at her constellations and how those affect her team comps. Her most valuable buffs come from C2, which doubles her Vivid Shots, her 4th constellation, which gives her an additional skill charge, and C6, which infuses her normal attacks with Anemo after using her skill. Lynette's 1st constellation adds in a little crowd control, which is nice, but I expect you'll mainly be using her for her burst. Overall, her constellations encourage you to use her skill as often as possible, and use her burst on cooldown. Lynette brings quite a few things to the table that might make you ditch those other Anemo characters. While I previously thought of Sucrose as the poor man's Vivi Shredder, Lynette picks up this role and expands on it, with a slightly shorter skill cooldown and double the burst duration for more elemental application. While Venti's the Anemo Archon, his skill doesn't produce as many particles on average as your other token Anemo characters, and his burst isn't guaranteed to crowd control every enemy, like the Kairagi or Nobushi from Inazuma. Lynette doesn't have this issue, as her burst pulls aggro instead of sucking enemies in. As arguably the best Anemo character in the game, Kazuha hasn't seen that much of a fall off, if any, since he released. Lynette can't realistically come close to replacing him due to his short skill cooldown, decent burst duration, and straightforward EM build. So while no one could really argue that Kazuha is a better unit, Lynette can act as a stand-in for him in most teams, as a free character that everybody gets. Overall, Lynette has some unique features that separate her from the Anemo support pack. Sucrose, Venti, Kazuha, and Lynette all have infusible bursts that can swirl even after absorbing an element, but Lynette's Bogglecat box controls enemies by drawing in their attacks instead of physically sucking them in. To me, this feels like a more consistent crowd control method as opposed to aiming Sucrose or Venti's bursts. Additionally, the Vivid Shots that come from the box are the actual elemental application from her burst. The range of these shots seems to be larger than the taunt range, making Lynette's burst feel more forgiving than either Sucrose or Venti's. After performing some tests with each of these characters, I noticed that Lynette's burst infused with elements nearly immediately, and I had no trouble getting it all set up. For everyone else though, it took some time to suck in nearby elements, which resulted in shorter application uptime, especially considering their bursts are noticeably shorter than Lynette's. While Lynette's burst energy cost sits right between Sucrose's and Venti and Kazuha's at 70, her burst duration is 1.5 to 2 times as long. We all know that Kazuha recharges his burst really quickly, what with that short skill cooldown and low burst cost. However, if you have enough constellations on your Lynette to give her that additional skill charge, she can actually recharge her burst in 6 skill uses as opposed to Kazuha's 7, assuming 100% energy recharge and no other characters producing particles. This makes her even better in those teams that use her burst for elemental application. And that's why you should build and use Lynette, not only for her overlane travel utility, but also for the diverse team comps and how good she is compared to the other Anemo support characters. Sprinkle in a few constellations, and she's all set to carry your team through some of the toughest bosses in the game. Thanks for watching the video. If you found it entertaining or informative, check out some of my other videos linked on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.